Economist here. So, going to be talking about the dismal science. Economics has been considered the dismal science, basically the depressing science. And really, the more I study economics, the more I realize that this is pretty much the case. That economics is a very depressive topic to even think about, talk about, to try and understand. Because most people, when you think about economics, you think about what it is that is impacting your life from, like, say, a social standpoint, government, your job, school, parents, stuff like that. But to really understand economics is really to understand it from your own perspective as your economy. And this is so important because I've tried to explain this many times to people out there, but never really have found that people have internalized it in a way that says, okay, I own this economy. I own what it is that has taken place around. I don't blame the politicians. I don't blame my boss. I don't blame, society. I have to now understand that this is for me to now internalize and do something about. And understanding it from this position then kind of alleviates a lot of the depressive nature of economics, because it's now giving you a better understanding of the situation instead of maybe being hopeful all the time with this anxiety that there's better times or a better politician, or the anticipation of like winning the lottery or something, and then your whole life will be like just hunky-dory from that point on. Understanding that the economics that we are facing is cyclical, right? It takes time to work its way through, but to really get it for your own self, from your own perspective, and understand that it's more of a natural occurrence, human behavior, not something that is controlled or necessarily like manipulated, although that could be the case inside of the ability coming from government once the people have risen with their skills and productions and stuff like that. You will find that people will try to govern this sort of behavior and take advantage of the people. But the people themselves have the skills, the desire, the want, the drive to produce and acquire for a better life. And this push for that better life is the beginning of the cycle, and which will eventually lead to pain and misery. Now, I'm not going to read from everything from Cantillon's essay because it's just way too long of a book to be reading right here in this short little time, because we're already 3 minutes into this video. But Cantillon's essay on economic theory, and this is chapter 6, and it's just the beginning, the abstract here. It says, Cantillon uses his price specie flow mechanism to analyze some of the effects of inflation. Increasing the supply of money by mining hurts some people and benefits others because certain prices and incomes rise faster than others. However, if new money is accumulated and saved by those who successfully export goods, either because of superior quality or more efficient transportation, it will lead to a higher standard of living. And now this is important to understand, right? Because this is where, like, Cantillon, and remember, Cantillon wrote this stuff like hundreds of years ago, right? Way before the United States. And when he does, talk about the United States, he's talking about it in a very, like, primitive form, like way before anybody's, like, had any kind of industrial revolution kind of thing, right? But what he is saying there really makes sense to just about anybody, anytime, any country, individual, business. I don't care what it is. It's the same thing. If you have new money coming in, you are going to raise your standard of living. And now how that new money comes in is very important, because the people who have first access to that money are the ones who are then going to raise their standard of living first, which separates everybody else, separates them from everybody else. And now that's the important thing to understand, because most people will look at this and say, oh, well, the government did it, or these greedy bastards, or something of that nature. No, it's just new money coming in. That's it. Who has access to that new money is going to then raise their standard of living. That's it. Like, it's human nature, described hundreds of years ago, millions of examples of it, and just think of it for yourself, right? If you are somebody who goes and gets a job when you're in high school and all your buddies are sitting around playing video games, and you go and get a car and you're driving around and then move, doing things, people are like, man, you got all this, awesomeness in your life. It was just like, yeah, I raised my standard of living, how the things that I enjoy in my life because I went and got a job, right? So this is the same thing no matter what you do. And it's important to understand it in that fashion, because a lot of times people are like wanting to look at it as some sort of manipulative behavior, but really it's just the new money coming in. Now, how that new money comes in can be very manipulated, but the fact that there is a separation between the rich and the poor is because of the new money, and that's it. Okay, that's the plain and simple fact of it. And you can look at it in any fashion you want, but that's the ultimate base of it all. And so when you think about it like that, and you think about how that new money comes in, and you think about the production of the United States or your own skills or everything else, when you expand that out to a significant proportion, right? So you think about like how much you are working and earning, you're getting the raises, the income is increasing, you're actually, doing quite well in your life. Well, you think about how delicate of a situation that becomes, right? Here, let's read from chapter 7. When there is an increase in the quantity of money, prices will increase depending on how the new money holders decide to spend that money or spend their money. Price changes will also be affected by such things as regulations on trade and the perishability of the products that are traded. In other words, the simple quantity theory of money is naive in proposing that a doubling in the quantity of money will double all prices equally. Changes in the quantity of money will change relative prices and have real effect on the economy, a phenomenon known as the Cantillon effect. And so this is, again, really important to understand, because as new money pours in, it doesn't necessarily drive the prices up on everything. A lot of people want to think that and say that and think that it's naive almost to think any other thing other than that. But then yet there is no real argument for why it is that the new money pours in, and yet we don't find inflationary scenarios in play in times of, like, say, the great financial crisis and the quantitative easings after that. Understanding how inflation really occurs is now important to understand that new money coming in has a direction in which it flows. And that direction in which it flows will then start creating the supply-demand imbalances. Very important to understand, because just because the new money comes in doesn't necessarily mean it's going to drive the prices up on everything. Driving the prices up on everything means that that new money coming in has to enter all channels at the same time. And considering that the lower half of the people, the people who have last access to the money, do not have the ability to enter that money in at the channels that they would normally enter the money in, what they are losing out in is the things that are now being consumed by the people who have first access to the money. So the added consumption from people who are now increasing their consumption from that new money is depriving the people at the lower end, which is now creating the supply-demand imbalances in the prices to move up. Again, this is a very complicated thing. A lot of people try to wrap their head around it. They're like, whoa, what the hell did he just say? But again, if you have new money coming in just at the top, how much added, take something very simple, and like, let's take it up to a little bit more modern day so that we can get a better grasp of this idea of how new money coming in doesn't necessarily drive the prices up on everything. If a whole bunch of new money came in to people who have first access to, like, just the top 25% of the people, right? Say in your little town, 25% of the people just got brand new money that's coming in. Now, tell me, how many of those people are going to go down and start buying cars? Probably quite a few of them. How many are going to run down and go to the bar? Probably quite a few of them. They're going to go to the grocery stores. They're going to start spending and buying 2 ribeyes instead. But how much added toilet paper are they going to buy? I mean, are they going to increase their consumption of toilet paper? Maybe slightly with the added food consumption, but not really, right? They're going to use just as much toilet paper as they've ever used. They're not going to increase their consumption of toilet paper because they got the new money. That, take it back to that. And when you understand that, then you'll understand why it is that the car prices move up dramatically, why the house prices move up dramatically, why all these things moved up dramatically, but yet things like toilet paper or toothpaste or something like that did not necessarily move up dramatically. And I'm talking about the great financial crisis, quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? This is a very relatable sort of idea of what Cantillon was talking about, in that the added consumption is what's driving up the prices, right? Again, it's very, very important. Like, you wouldn't have seen toilet paper moving up in price if it wasn't for the shortages taking place, because how many people are actually going to increase their consumption of toilet paper? Very few. But if you got a bunch of money and all of a sudden you don't know what to do with this money, how many people might go out there and upgrade their TV? How many people might go out there and buy a video game? How many people might go out there and buy dishware? How many people might go out there and buy new clothes? How many people might go out there and spend it on experiences? Okay? All the stuff that they couldn't really have, all these luxurious items. But they're not going to necessarily increase the toilet paper purchasing. All right. Moving on. So, once you get to this point, right, you have enjoyed your luxuries, you have this higher standard of living, right? The recognition of the separation between the rich and the poor is now quite obvious. The inequality grows. People are complaining. They're saying, hey, you got greedy people everywhere who are not sharing the wealth and all this other stuff. And yeah, that's sort of true, but then it's also human nature to try and acquire and to have as much as you possibly can, because it just seems to be human nature to do that. Now, you might find some humans out there who really enjoy sharing their wealth, and that, hey, it's quite charitable of them to do that. But you can't expect humans to just all of a sudden change human psychology that has been ingrained into them for survival purposes since the beginning of time. That's not gonna change, right? I mean, that internal hard wiring is not something, I mean, I guess you could be taught out of you, but that's not what human instinct is going to do. All right, let's read from chapter 8 here. The increase in supply of money from the balance of trade eventually causes prices to rise. This in turn puts pressure on domestic producers and increases imports. Again, think about the increase in your standard of living, because your increase in standard of living and all the added consumption that you have now done has caused the prices to increase. Those increased prices are now starting to bring in foreign competition, because now the foreign competition can now sell that to you cheaper than what you can make it for. That's important to understand, because this is what the United States is facing. We cannot produce it as the same as the foreign competition can. We cannot compete with that. And this is something that has been described hundreds of years ago. We can blame it on politicians, we can blame it on corporations, we can blame it on all kinds of stuff, but yet Cantillon describes it. Puts the pressure on domestic producers and increases the imports. The result is that the balance of trade is reduced and eventually is negative, right? Trade imbalances. Now you're bringing in more stuff than you're exporting. This is the Cantillon price specie flow mechanism, which demonstrates the reason for the tendency for equilibrium in the international monetary flows. The balance of trade can result in economic power, but this also causes the economy to lapse into luxuries and decline. Right? And this is essentially what we are having to face, is that we are now moved into the luxury portions of this timeline. And it's only a matter of time before we eventually fall into decline. And that's really kind of scary to think about, as how long does that take before the new money turns off? And how does that new money come in? It comes in from the issuance of U.S. Treasuries and the Federal Reserve injection of cash, the reserves, the liabilities of the Federal Reserve. And now I think about how it is that the Federal Reserve is going to continue to try and inject this money into the system as the demand for dollars increases, with the dollar-denominated debt that continues to grow beyond the capabilities of the Fed to provide the liquidity to pay it off. I wonder how it is that this debt bubble is going to eventually come to an end. Maybe this is a little bit too far out for a lot of people to understand, but essentially there is dollar-denominated debt that exists outside of this country. outside of the United States. It doesn't have anything to do with the banks, doesn't have anything to do with the government, doesn't have anything to do with our people, doesn't have anything to do with us at all, not anything, except that they have issued debts that are due in dollars, US dollars. That means when those debts come due, they have to try and acquire dollars from somebody somewhere out there. And when they get those dollars, then they can pay their debts off. How they get those dollars becomes very difficult when you have the Federal Reserve in a quantitative tightening position. And this is what we're facing around the world today. A lot of times you will find articles or even individuals out there who are screaming about how it is that the countries of the world are dumping their US treasuries. They're not dumping treasuries, they're getting into cash. That's what's happening. And you're finding that the dollar-denominated debt that is coming due is becoming very burdensome and if not stressful, if not crisis situation for some countries out there when it comes to paying back those dollar-denominated debts, and they're due to China. This is scary to think about. So when you have this dollar-denominated debt that is due around the world, and you have an increasing U.S. Treasury issuance in order for the Federal Reserve to then load up the balance sheet to provide the world with this liquidity, you wonder how long can it really last? You know? See, this is why so many people start figuring this stuff out and they think, oh man, now what? What are you going to do? There's no fixing this system. The fixing of the system, there's like, how do you fix this? How do you fix the massive amounts of luxurious life that the United States is enjoying, importing production of the world and the issuance of debt? How do you fix that? Like, okay, you're going to have to work twice as hard, right? That's like twice as hard to pay off debt, not enjoy anything new. You can't enjoy anything luxurious, only the bare necessities. Take no more ribeyes, right? You can't eat ribeyes, right? Not, especially you can't eat two of them. You got to scale that back to the absolute bare minimum for survival, and you start paying off that debt. You start figuring out how it is that you can compete against the world without tariffs and taxes and subsidies, right? Because that's not competitive. That's ever increasingly more burdensome. See, this isn't something that you can fix. Understanding it for yourself and understanding why it's happening. Well, now you can put yourself in a position in which that you're not nearly as damaged as a lot of people out there who believe that they can vote somebody in who can fix it, right? You can take care of your own position. You can be heavy in gold and silver. You can be heavy in Bitcoin for a lesser extent to be outside of that third-party claim. You can understand why it is that the system is going down the path that it is, what it is that the Federal Reserve is needing to do in order to provide liquidity to the world. You can understand from the past statements that there could be a very real possibility of going into a digital currency, which may force your wealth into a system in which that you will not be able to get out of. Right? Understanding how that occurs, or what that might look like, what negative interest rates may be. I mean, this world is not something that is to be looked at as somebody else's problem. This is your problem. It's only you. There's nobody else. That's what's scary about it is that there's a lot of people out there who seem to think that there's groups of people out there who can fix it or change it or make it better for you. That ain't gonna happen. This is survival in the wild thoughts, right? I mean, you have this rule of man. What does that mean? They make up something to prevent you from living your life in the way that is going to be the most impactful for your survival, right? This is not a game to be played. This is survival. And it's very important to look at it in that fashion, to understand that these things that are occurring are not something that is made up. These things that are occurring is natural economic forces. It's like the laws of gravity. It's like human nature that impacts every single person out there in a way that is so profound that nobody really is ready to understand it in that fashion, not knowing that every single piece of this puzzle is tied together, that you are a working mechanism inside of the greater economy. Economics is the mechanical version of consciousness. And it's the hardest thing to really wrap your head around, but to understand that without your piece in it, the things would not be happening the way you think it would. Your economy functions individually in a way that is so impactful and so profound to the rest of the globe, you don't even know it. And I know I talk into crystal grip and hippie weirdness here, but really when you start to see it in the fashion of an energy impact, you will start to understand why it is that money flows in the direction it does. You got to understand there's money everywhere. It flies everywhere. There's no lack of money. Abundance flows like crazy. Most people limit themselves on it, believing that there is nothing but limitation to their abundance, and that's what holds them back. So the depressive science is what keeps you there. Understanding that it's not a depressive thing, it's just a naturally occurring thing. Is bad weather depressive? No. I mean, can it be a depressing moment? It can feel that way. You can make it be that way. And hurricanes come ripping through. Yeah, that's very depressing. You know, it tears all these buildings apart. You know, death and destruction and all the stuff that happens from it. Yeah, that's right. You know, those things occur because it's a naturally occurring thing. It's like you can get mad at people for it. What are you going to get mad about? It's a damn hurricane. You know, I mean, it's just what it is. It's like, yeah, you got to deal with it. And so once you understand it in this fashion and you start dealing with it in that fashion, you realize, man, I can protect myself from this economy. I can protect myself from the third parties. I can do things that now has the flow of money coming back towards me because I'm thinking more like a capitalist instead of somebody who is now wishing and hoping and dreaming that somebody will come in and fix and deal with this system so I don't have to understand it. Property ownership and capitalism. That's how you do it. That's how you get yourself independent from the state. That's how you don't blame other people. That's how you figure out how it is that you're going to have a life that is going to be so much easier than everybody else, and they wonder how it is that you were able to do it so easily. It's because you stopped thinking that there was going to be somebody coming to save the system, and you understood that this is a survival of the fittest, and that you have to position yourself in order to be in a survival position. And not a survivalist mindset, and an abundance mindset. Because the abundance mindset is the survivalist. Everybody else is thinking they're about ready to die, which is meaning that all the energy and everything that they put towards it is going to lead them in that path. Subconsciously, they will make decisions that will then damage their own life. They will put them in a position to prove themselves right. Yeah, economics is the dismal science if you make it, that way. If you don't think about it being dismal, you just think about it as the cycle. You think, man, America really got to enjoy that rise in the Industrial Revolution and building all these wonderful products out there for the world, and they had these wonderful families in which that a single income could produce enough for the entire household, and all this wonderfulness that was existent back then, and the greatest standard of living. And then eventually, we really enjoyed that standard of living and started enjoying the production of other nations. I wonder who described that hundreds of years ago. Right? It's just like, it's once it becomes obvious to you, you don't think about it being, a consequence to to you. You think about it being like, a benefit. You think, okay, great, man. We live in this wonderful experience of mass abundance and production of the world. And you have to think, man, this is not going to last forever. How do I deal with this in a way that allows me to continue to enjoy my life, but then also know and understand that this very well could come to an end? How many people have ever been fired? You ever been fired? You know what it's like to be fired? It sucks. You know how scary that is? How am I going to pay my bills? What am I going to do to eat? What am I going to do? What if I get sick? What? Right? This is what ends up taking place when you get fired. I think back every time I contemplate these ideas. I always think back to that Roman tablet that I was watching on that documentary where they were discussing the average Roman life. And this dude had etched into a chunk of marble tablet, whatever. He inscribed this his fears, right? And he says he had 3 main fears. He wrote out there. He goes, what am I gonna do if for my next meal? Like, what am I gonna do if I get hungry? What happens if I get sick? And how do I pay the rent? No kidding. All the way back into the Roman times, these were the 3 main concerns that this average Roman dude had. Right? What am I going to do to eat? How do I pay the rent? And what happens if I get sick? Okay? Those are always going to be the case, no matter what. And to think that there is ever going to be a situation in which that isn't the case ain't ever going to happen. Never. Right? So it's very important to now internalize this stuff for what it is, know that it's a cycle, know that it isn't necessarily manipulated by greed of corporations or the stupidity of government, but that they are just simply reacting to the environment that we have now created as being industrious humans who want to have a higher standard of living. It will come to an end when the new money turns off. All right, let's go check out this super chat. I'm just really going off today. All right, Malk? Thank you so much for the $5. Moving from California to North Dakota for a job opportunity, so have a $5 before freeze my butt off. Huh. Well, thank you, Malk, for the $5, and I hope your experience up to North Dakota is a very prosperous one. Thank you so much, man. And we got another one who has become a channel. Dennis, thank you so much for being a member of the channel. All right. Okay. Simon, come back at lunch. Yeah, I'll come back at lunch. Molly, stop the... Uh-oh, is Molly upset? What's going on? There's something going on in here. Okay. Market doing pretty well today. Yeah, is it? I don't know. I haven't even looked. What time is it? All right, 7 o'clock. So I got about another half an hour here before I got to go into work. All right, embracing the evil of the system as permanent is self-defeating, I think. No, I don't think so. I think you do, like, are you going to fish? Have you ever fished? Like, if you go fishing, you can't cast your line and say, no, the fish need to bite my lure, the lure that I'm casting. The way I'm casting it, the depth that I'm pulling the lure through. Like, the fish need to bite that lure. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? You have to look at the lake that you're fishing in, the body of water, and you say, man, I have to now conduct myself in order to catch this fish in the way that the fish want to get caught, right? So I can't help the system that I'm in. I can't, I go out there and change the system, right? I'm do that all day. Like, I got 142,000 subscribers on here. I can't get them to just go ahead and just study this thing. Like, I'm supposed to change the system. I can't. Like, I know I can't. I see people out there protesting and they hold their signs and they think that they're doing something to change the way things are going. And I think, man, you're an activist? No, I'm an activist. I see the change that I have can impact on people. There's very little I can do. I can help understand the economic forces from what I've learned, from what I've had discussions with other people. But the idea of changing the system is going to be very, very frustrating right? I believed in it at one time. I believed that there was a way that we could change the system. I had an honest belief that Ron Paul was going to make it into presidency. I did. Like, I mean, I never really, I mean, deep down inside, I knew it. But I thought that, man, people were going to be excited and he was going to be pushing it, right? And the Republican Party blackballed him. It was so disappointing. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, is this really happening right now? I'm like, man, I'm out. I'm out. I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I tried, I put a bunch of energy into it. All the other, like, okay, politics, you're on your own, man. I'm out. I'm done. Like, I am just not giving a crap about it anymore. And I'm going to conduct myself and do things that I could hopefully get them as much out of my life as I possibly can. Obviously, there are some things that I just can't do. Right? I cannot like, I gotta have a driver's license. I gotta pay the income tax. I gotta do all these other things, right? But I do not have to store my wealth in what it is that they anticipate. I can exclude myself out of it. I know how to do that. I know the positions in which I would need to take. Right? I understand the system for what it is. I understand why it is that this inequality continues to grow. So now when I understand the system and what's going on there and the idea of what it would take to fix it, I'm like, no, man, you can't do that. I don't want to put my kids through that much pain and misery. I don't think I want to see your kids going through that pain and misery. Certainly don't want to see the grandkids do it because they don't even exist yet. But the path that we would need to go down in order to fix the system, they would have to face pain and misery. They wouldn't get to enjoy the luxurious life that we get to enjoy. Right? They would suffer the consequences of all the experiences that everybody thought that they deserved and were entitled to from their hard work and in production and savings. They get to experience the downward cycle of that. Right? Is that something that I want to put them through? No. I don't want to fix the system because that's what it would be. It would be putting them in that pain and misery. I don't get to experience it. The cycle takes too long. All right? I mean, the cycle takes way too long for me to truly feel the pain and misery that it would take. But my grandkids would certainly feel it. They would be feeling the worst of it because that's how long it would take in order for us to lower our standard of living to be competitive against the rest of the world. In order for us to produce the products to then be a producing, saving nation again, which would be the moment that we could raise our standard of living. You have to go through the cycle. We are not in a position to do that. Nobody wants to face that. I don't want my kids to face it. Will it happen at some point? Yeah, it's inevitable. Like at some point, future generation will face it, whether you want to or not. So, gold, silver, lesser extent, cryptocurrencies. Understand that property owners and capitalists are the ones who live independently of the state. You know, that's how you figure it out. That's it. Like, be accepting that it sucks, right? The whole system is not one that is designed to be pleasant. They didn't design it to be pleasant. I understand it that they have their system going on. Well, I have my system. I have my own economy. I have one that excludes them at some point out of it, as part of it. Sometimes I have to include myself in it. I have no other choice if I want to be prosperous in this system that takes advantage of the people through the issuance of new currency. Well, hell, get into the position of getting new currency. Be the property owner. Be the one who is a capitalist. Everybody else who is wishing and hoping and dreaming that they can vote somebody in who's gonna like change that system show me a time. Show me a time in history in which that you can vote people in that made the system awesome and great for everyone. It doesn't work like that, right? It never will, because human nature doesn't work that way. All right, moving on. You guys enjoying this live stream this morning? All right, Maxwell, fine on my side. Check your sound. Okay. I did not leave society. Society left me. And I believe the system can change, but regular people need to look through the controlled division that we currently are in. No, I mean, I don't, man. I don't believe it. I don't believe it because I think that if you were to really go and read history, you will find no matter what point in history that somebody is describing, you could probably relate the four economic theories to it, right? Especially Gresham's law, Triffin's dilemma, or Cantillon effect, right? The bullwhip effect maybe on a lesser extent in certain cycles of it, but really, if you understood those four economic theories deeply, you would see in just about any time in history, you can see why it's occurring the way it is, why people are behaving the way they are, what caused it to take place, you know? A lot of times people just think, oh, it was just this weird phenomenon that happened. And it was just like, no, it was the overabundance of money that was flowing through there that caused the people to be stupid. And they were stupid for so long that they just had this mass luxury separation between the rich and the poor. And it was just this crazy event that was happening. Okay? And everybody was just like, what's going on here? You know, it's just like understanding that the flow of money came through. And it was the rise of that particular area or nation. Maybe they did it through, expansion of their shipping channels. Maybe they did it through mass exporting of their productions. Maybe it was through war efforts. Who knows? New money comes in, people enjoy that new money, raises the luxury, foreign production comes in, domestic manufacturing leaves, the new money turns off, and everybody falls into poverty. It's the same thing over and over again. All right, what time is it? All right, I got just a few more minutes here. Don't fight the Fed. I don't think it's really fighting, or I don't know. To me, it's not a fight. To me, it's not a fight or a joining or anything. It's not a teaming up. It's not any of that. It's just is. It's just an is. They is doing this, right? That's it. That's all there is to it. And once you understand that's what's going on, that their impact on the economy is how you have positioned yourself for it, right? Some people have positioned themselves to quite prosper in that. Other people say, no, what they are doing is causing you pain and suffering. And I was like, well, depending on how you position yourself. So if you understood the Fed, understood what it is that they're doing, understand how it is that you can deal with the effects that comes from monetary policy, how it is that you can exclude yourself from the effects of maybe government intrusion, how you do that is up to you. Maybe if as a business owner, you can't. You have conditioned yourself, you have started a business, built it up for 20 years, and now you're in a position in which that the political environment now impacts you greatly, right? Hey, that was the economy you built. That's not my economy. I don't have to look at politics for my economy. I look at monetary policy. I look at what it is that I can do for investments. I look at other things that don't include politics into it. I make decisions not based on politics. Therefore, political decisions don't impact my life as much as somebody who does make decisions based on politics. Very different economies, and it's very important to understand that. That's another reason why people find it to be a very dismal science or depressive science, is because when other people are like, woohoo, I'm in it, and they're not, and they're wondering why the hell this is occurring, it must be them, I must suck at this, I must not know life, or whatever, right? Put you in a very depressive state. It's not that. It's just that you just don't know how it is that the cycles are flowing through, and you want to find the blame or cast blame or reason. And to understand that this is a naturally occurring thing. Yeah, it looks different. I mean, this dude was talking about horses and wagons and stuff, man. We already have airplanes and cell phones. It's not the same environment. I get that part. But what most people don't get is that the underlying economic forces that creates the spread of wealth, the inequality, the dive into luxuries, right? The inevitable collapse, Once you have figured this out and you see it, you can then recognize now what is going to occur going into the future. Maybe you'll see some of the signs of it ahead of time, like what we are facing today. Like you think about all these tariffs, all the subsidies, all the idea to try and keep the manufacturing here in the United States, and desperately trying to keep it here, right? Oh God, how do we? Don't let it go. Like do whatever you do, don't let it go, right? Because if you let it go, man, you even harder of an experience that we're gonna face from it. Let's go check out this last super chat before I quit. All right, man. Super chats. Kraken, thank you so much for the $5. If we understood the system, we can step up our game within it. We don't have a working alternative to it at this time. That's right. Dude, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with you on this one. Go hit the like button before we quit the live stream. I'm going to give it up here in about 5 minutes. But you're absolutely right about that. Like, you know, once you have internalized this information, right? Once you have understood it, why it's occurring the way it is, then it doesn't make it as scary or burdensome or depressing or I don't know, like I don't know like what the exact term I'm looking for, but you look at it for what it really is, right? You're it's like you're fishing. You're not going to catch fish every time you go out fishing, but if you fish a lot, you're probably going to be a pretty good fisherman. Okay? So if you think that same sort of energy towards the economy, you're going to find that your success in understanding your not only your position and for what it is that you need to do going into the future is going to become a lot more clear. Most of the time, we are trying to find somebody else who is explaining it to us in a way that we can then say, aha, I got it. Right? Aha, that aha moment, that final video in which it says, yes, that was it. That filled in the last piece for me. It doesn't, nope, not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. It doesn't go down like that. Believe me, I've been doing this for 20 years, every single day for 3-4 hours a day. There is no video, there is no book, there is no lecture, there is no nothing, right? There's nothing, literally. Your understanding of the economy is a personal thing, right? What I talk a lot about on this channel is monetary policy, because I think monetary policy has the most impactful thing to each one of us individually, because our economy, our individual economy, is impacted by monetary policy. Not all of us are impacted by the political decision. Not all of us are impacted by the weather conditions of areas, right? Or the war-torn issues of an area. It might have some residual impact, inflationary kind of impact, but monetary policy has a serious impact on every single person. The adjustment of interest rates and the balance sheet adjustments and how the Federal Reserve is conducting the financial system is so impactful on the economy. Understand that the financial system is a portion of the economy, right? But because the financial system can make the economy influenced, right? It can push the markets. It can give them the idea that things are going to happen and now have like major impact on every single person's lives, whether or not they have a job or get laid off. All this now starts to take place because they can control the financial portion of it, how people get loans, what they do with those loans, right? Understanding that this is different from the government and how government impacts. Government has a different impact on it. They have a bunch of job creation. They do a bunch of stimulus spending programs. That's different from the financial portion of things, right? What we look at is the financial portion of things because, again, that is the most impactful part of our lives. If I had a government job, that would be very important in my life. And I totally get that, how a lot more people now have so much reliance on the government, especially when it comes to a paycheck, that they have a very politically minded idea of their economy. But that's not the economy. The monetary policy isn't the economy. That's it. You are the economy. There's nobody else. All right? And how it is that you deal with it. You may not have positioned yourself for government intrusion. Maybe you have. right? Maybe you positioned yourself to take advantage of the financial system when you see, cash flowing assets that are available for purchase through debt, right? You go borrow money, buy a cash flowing asset, money flows into you, and then it wasn't even your money. Like, you just got cash flowing towards you. You didn't even do it. It was like, there. Oh, look at it flow towards me. Wow, who does this? Maybe every single rich person I know personally. Like, I've been to the rebel capitalists. How do they all make their money? Good debt. They borrow money, buy cash flowing assets, right? Separate themselves from the rich, or separate themselves from the poor. It's like that. It's like almost like a 3-step process. Step 1, find asset. Step 2, get money. Step 3, separate yourself from the poor. Alrighty, guys. I don't think I have much time left here. 7:18. I hope you guys enjoyed this morning's live stream. I just kind of had a wild hair and decided to just get it fired up. All right. Hi, I'm Canadian and was wondering what your thoughts on my country's currency. I get a lot of questions asking about the other nations' currencies and their monetary policies and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, I'm so focused in on the United States and what it is that they are doing that I really just don't have time to try and fully grasp what it is that's being said or conducted or theorized within the monetary policies of other nations out there. Ultimately, the United States is going to have a strengthening dollar going into the future. The interest rate cutting that people are anticipating, you think about it, here's the thing that I understand about monetary policy, maybe we'll just kind of leave it at this, is that interest rate cuts have more of an impact on the economy, the markets, the behaviors, the ideas, right? The cuts, the idea of it, right? The anticipation of it. The results of the cuts take like 6 months to a year. However, if the markets are anticipating it ahead of time, they will conduct themselves as if those rate cuts have already happened. This is very important to understand because things are occurring within the markets right now as if rate cuts had happened. People are behaving in this fashion. You're seeing a lot of rates and mortgages and stuff like that starting to be issued and conducting themselves in a way as if they could possibly in the future refinance those loans. It's not evident that this is a major trend. What I am saying is that look out there at all the narrative that you are hearing within the propagandized information. Very, very few people are talking about anything other than a rate cut. Okay? That right there is going to be very impactful on the economy. The Federal Reserve will then find excuse or reason, and I'm not saying they will, they could, right, to not have to lower rates. Now, even if they did, let's say they do lower rates, because they very well could. I mean, nobody can predict the future. They could lower rates in September. Now, if that was a mistake, it will be a grave mistake, one that they cannot afford to make. So they must make sure that the timing on this rate cut is absolutely perfect. Like, cannot screw this up if you cut too early. Now, if they cut too late, that might be somewhat painful, and it might cause, some job losses and some pain in the economy. But cutting too early would be a grave mistake. So, the idea of a September rate cut means that everything has to be lining up absolutely perfect for the Federal Reserve to do that. Because holding on to the interest rates would be less of a mistake, even if it was the wrong decision, than cutting too early if it was the wrong decision. This is coming directly from the Federal Reserve's voting member of the FOMC, Christopher Waller, in a speech he gave, just last week. So, in my opinion, the dollar is going to remain strong. And if other nations out there try to weaken their currency, what they are going to experience is a much stronger dollar out there, and the dollar is going to then be much more painful of an experience on the rest of the globe, as the rest of the globe has dollar-denominated debt that they have to pay with dollars, and trying to acquire strong dollars is going to be very difficult. This is actually going to benefit China, because China has issued out a lot of dollar-denominated debt. Right? Now, will it benefit China to the point that they're going to be like, in the money and the survival of, like in a greater, like they'll be in a better position. Now, whether or not it positions them to be like, on top and king of the hill, I don't know. Like, I don't know how much they actually issued out there, or whether or not it's actually going to get paid, or whether or not they can repossess any of the stuff that that money was lent for. Right? All that is very questionable. The fact is that it all exists, though. Right? All that dollar-denominated debt exists. And the fact that the dollar is in a quantitative tightening position, which means that the Federal Reserve is reeling in dollars, pulling in the reserves, causing their liabilities to disappear. And this is all happening right now. And people, again, are very confused about why it is that some of the things that are occurring out there are occurring. You want to find blame and reason instead of or you want to find blame and excuses instead of finding reason. And the reason behind it all is generally it's cyclical, and it's been taking place for such a long time that it makes it hard to understand why it's occurring. You want to say, well, that event must have done it because now I'm recognizing it, and this is the most recent event that has occurred. So those two must be it, right? Much like, Biden caused inflation. Funny, right? I mean, it's just like, if Biden wasn't president, I wouldn't have had inflation. And so you relate those two, and it's just like, okay, so you don't, I don't relate that, but a lot of people do. And because they do that, they will never understand anything that's written in this book, because they already have their reason. But what they have done is they came up with an assumption that was wrong. And now they will never figure out the real reason. It's just the unfortunate case. All right, I got to go, guys. Uneducated Economist, you let me know.